I'm feeling really good because this has been long called for. That's just how I want to put it, like putting in the hours step by step. It's like when you invest in the small things, eventually that reaches a synthesis. It integrates. It has to. It's the way things have always been. So I really wanted to hear from you. I thought it's a great way to begin. Now I would like to find amidst all these a starting point. For you, for me, for all of us, for the rest of creation. Because somehow there's something quite deep about this that had allowed scores of people, hundreds to the thousands of people to commit their lives to this. This is what people do. This is what people are. And it could only go so deeper. So imagine what you could do with something comprehensive. So my gratitude to you for heeding the call. For me, these always start with a seed of an idea. What if we could do that? Because I'm ready to commit. This is really, for me, what would help a very complex environment humanity finds itself in. We somehow feel the answers are there, but it takes a certain set of conditions to be able to see things well, to see things properly. So my intuition right now is to start from the beginning of the inner dance, like where all of this began, without going too much into storytelling, because one does get lost in details. The details somehow hold the space for something much deeper. So I'm quite careful in the way I would now channel the sense, the essence, the ethos, or the spirit behind this that must be that which speaks. I think one possible point, and all points are metaphors of each other. It doesn't have to be any one point. But if there was one point in which it began in the inner dance, then it was the mother. It was the mother. We could work with that as a starting point. And when you hear the word mother, what comes to mind is the human mother, or the divine mother, which is still a personification of maybe that which does not look human. Maybe there's something beyond our conceptualizations that actually holds the mother. So the mother guides a lot of this. The mother has been holding this. The mother was the source. It was it was the point in the middle. If we ask what is the inner dance, what is the experience? Today I'd like to talk about it as an experience of what we go through when we die. It's an experience of death. It's an actual experience of going there to the other dimension or the other space. And so death is not a destination, it's a transition from one space to another. And inner dance is that transition without having to die you can have a glimpse of what it would be like to come from here there. And so if there was any process, it doesn't have to be exactly the thing that brings us together now, this inner dance process. Anything that allows for the many points to collapse into like a middle point. I think I'd like to go into the screen. Oops, just tuned to my iPad. There, okay. I'm a really visual person. Okay. So any event, any situation in which the many points could find somehow a way of collapsing in a middle space. This is, I think, what we're studying. This for me is where it began, where it happened. And I can speak about this in a way that's not conceptual. I had actual experience of dying. Like I died. I died and I experienced what came after death. And there's no difference. There's no separation between what I experienced in death and birth, as compared to what I experienced in inner dance and what people experience in inner dance. So it could be that simple. It could actually be that basic. When you have the ability, either on your own or to allow others, to allow all of these different points. They could be thoughts, concepts, they could be all that we're attached to. They could be images, they could be colors, shapes. Through your creativity, through your intuition, if you find a way to allow all of these to collapse into a middle space, then it's just going to happen. That which we call death or that which we call birth, it could be. So in many ways in my journey, the mother, it could be any word. It could be another concept altogether. The mother for me was a point that I could collapse into. If I could take all my exhaustion, my frustration, my tiredness, and I could invest all of that, if I could collapse or die into something that I could trust the most, what would be your middle space? So I'd like that to inspire you. When you hold space for others, they are on the verge of collapse. They are on the verge of finding what might be called oneness. Any practice, any situation, any experience that allows that to happen, it just will, because that is in fact a tendency. So this is where you can be creative. Learn to read the space, learn to understand people's minds and what's in their bodies. What would allow them to trust? And when they trust, that is what creates the directionalities that allows this to happen. So in death, there is an actual directional experience, and it's called an inloading. Okay, let me explain what that means. An inloading is the event in which everything that had been projected So maybe in the beginning, the actual arrows don't actually point inwards. Like in birth, the arrows would actually extend from inwards to outwards, so that consciousness would offload itself to the outside, what was experiencing itself from inside. So in death, there would be a reversal or an inversion of that, where we would start to go back into one point, a oneness. There's something about this that begins to define the mother, not just as what we think she is. The mother is not the human mother. It's not just the divine mother. And in inner dance, we work with the mother in a very, very functional way. When you bring this into the level of science, the mother is a consciousness that studies what is it that binds or shapes the universe. What is it that allows all of these different points to actually stay apart from each other? And then what is it that allows them to collapse into maybe a one point? And then what is it that allows us to once again scatter once again? So this is, we would work with conceptualizations or stories such as this, because this is what inner dance is. It is very interested in how are we able to hold a lot of this. So if I was to rename the mother in this way, okay, when the mother was introduced to me, she called herself many names. This is one of her names. And beyond Kali from the Sanskrit, Kali is time in many ways. Kali has something to do with time, particularly black time. Okay, so let's go back to the mother. If the mother isn't just that human that gave birth to you, the mother is time, but the mother is the space where time emanates from. The mother is basically space. The mother is the space where all points, all beings, all manifestations are derived from, in the sense that you come from the mother, everything comes from the mother. So there's something in the universe that is called source. It's the it's it's the place of emergence, the space of possibility. And we draw upon this when we lay down, when we close our eyes. So to build a relationship with this is what's upon us now. How would you work with her without over romanticizing her? You know, when you Google the Divine Mother, you would get pictures of Shakti or Kali or Mother Mary or Kuan Yin or Isis. It's very easy to work with archetypes. I don't work with archetypes. She spoke to me, and she did have so many different faces, sometimes very young, sometimes very old, sometimes somewhere in the middle. But where that tendency stopped, where she would speak to me as something that could be recognized by religion and by culture, it was when I heard the words spoken. And this is the first time I experienced the inner dance in its totality, when I became the consciousness that creates and destroys all things. The words were, the mother and I are now one. This was what was spoken. This is what I heard. And that holds resonance. It means a lot. So understanding that the mother isn't just the mother, so I'm really careful about the way I say these. If the mother has something to do with time and space, we would then unravel today, the next weeks, the next months, the next year. What does it mean for you to become one with time? What would it mean for you to become time? And so all these questions start to become relevant, like beginning to ask these as you hold a space for others, as you are held by the space. What does all of this have to do with death? That when you die, you keep asking yourself this until you don't face it with fear. You are able to face it with objectivity. What would you look like after you die, after you're done here? Would it be painful? Would it be a homecoming? Would it be a remembrance? You know, like what would the transition be like? And the more you're not afraid to hold these, something comes to your experience, whether you're laying down with your eyes closed, with music playing or not. Everything that you know, everything that you understand would manifest. So for me, that is also a that's also a starting point. Um, a lot of people right now, they perceive inner dance as a workshop or as a spiritual modality. For me, I didn't do anything. I was alone in the conditions where I could experience who we are, or what I am, what we are. But, this is a bit big.
I think you're not sharing your
Oh,
iPads.
oh, really? Okay. Thank you, Abby. Yeah, share. Yeah. Okay. So, um, for me, I had an experience of the universe, of time, but that experience came about because I was holding on to an understanding. And for me, this is where it could begin. It depends on how you look at it. It's either you have an understanding, you will experience that understanding. It's either you experience something, and then that will influence the way you understand how the world works or what you are. Like, what is your entry point? Did you have an experience? And that open up questions so that you would come into a greater understanding? Or were you already understanding something, so it was only a matter of time before you experienced a perception of reality that was so much bigger than how you might have seen it prior? You know, so they piggyback onto each other. They're interrelated. But I began with this. I didn't begin with the experience. I understood the world somehow as something. And if I was to name that, it was that. I understood that the world was one. I understood that everything was happening for a reason. I understood that everyone I met was God or the goddess speaking to me. I understood that I could have the worst day. I could have the worst the worst thing happened to me, and I understood that it was all perfect. It was all imperfection. I had no space for doubt. I only trusted. And because I kept holding that understanding, I didn't give up, even though I was not experiencing it. I wasn't experiencing it. I was experiencing separation. I was experiencing a horrible world where there was a war, there was poverty, there was disease, there was unhappiness, there was despair, depression, suicides. I It didn't matter to me. I chose to hold just the understanding. So I wish to offer this to you as a starting point. A lot of people are experience seeking. They are addicted to experiences. They are in love with exploding and, smashing open. And sometimes the more one experiences, the more we actually close the understanding. So in many ways, it doesn't actually matter what the experience is, because the experience will come. The understanding will make sure that that will come. And so, how, when this finds you, how are you understanding the world? And if this really did come, it was because the understanding is there. And so I think we must value and honor both. So we must place great importance in what might come before. What is the chicken here and what is the egg? And so learning to speak in the way you hold the space, it doesn't matter what people see, what they feel. It's going to come. What matters is the mother. This is then an understanding of the mother. What is the mother of experience? What is the mother of it's understanding. It's the perception. So in the last years, I've been going back to what was my understanding of the world? Like, how did I perceive Earth before the inner dance first came to me, when the word spoke that the mother and I are now one. Uh, it sounds so simple, like how I might be describing oneness, but there was a whole architecture. There was a whole entire blueprint for how reality could be reformed according to this one, to oneness. And sometimes that could come to you in one fell swoop. It can come in one amazing big experience, but it could also just happen really slowly, one day at a time, building. So something actually does mediate, like both of these. This could be either called creation. You could also just label it as behavior, that which you do, that which you act, or how you react to the world. So the more you understand something, the more you would actually create that understanding. And the more you create that understanding, the more you'd experience. So in my life, this is how it began. I had an understanding, and then I was able to create the conditions where that understanding would then lead into an experience of the universe. And that experience then led to a greater understanding, because I was experiencing the world built in oneness. Then I could understand it more and more, not just as a totality, but as many parts. Right now, a lot of people are experiencing the inner dance as a workshop. And so the arrows are actually quite inverted, where instead of reality beginning with understanding. A lot of people are beginning with the experience, and that is something that allows them to ask more and more questions. So there's something inverted in terms of cause and effect. The understanding is something that happens like in the mind, and then the experience is something that normally happens in the body. So we would want to define, what does it mean to experience, and what does it mean to understand? And what is the mind? What is the nature of the mind in relation to the body? Like, how do we begin to understand the body where experience happens? And how do we understand the mind where understanding is held or emerges from? It's very understandable why a lot of people might choose to begin with the body. Why do people choose to begin with the body? The body is not just a body anymore, and there's an inversion where a lot of persons actually experience the mind through the body, that the body is a body mind somehow. So somehow this inversion needs to take place because a lot of the understanding is hiding in the experience. Because the body is the body is something that stores the information. And most people, because of the way the mind is being experienced, when we say one is too much in the mind, then there is a somewhat limited understanding that then limits experience. So somehow the process needs to be inverted in a lot of people, in the way they need to attend workshops. They need somewhat the sessions, because it's not easy to arrive at an understanding that everything is one, that everything is connected, that somehow everything is happening for a reason. No matter how many times you repeat this to certain minds, because a lot of the information is lodged in the body. That information doesn't just shift easily, because there are now patterns, there are now habits. The energy had been made real, had been made manifest, made solid. We now need to work on the experience. We can work through the experience that holds surprise, shock, that can alter lives. But having said that, we do need to understand that without holding the space for understanding to follow, and there are many dangers to holding too much experience. When you don't hold an understanding of the experience itself, then the experience tends to loop. And the danger there is the old or limited understanding actually starts to bleed into the new experience. So the new experience itself starts to mimic what is old. We simply repeat a lot of old stories. The more we hold on to that which is not changing and that which is not shifting. So it's very important that we get a sense of it, how all of these work, not just the new understanding that is coming to you, like a new understanding of the world, as I can hear in your words. You're holding space for seeing the world in a new way, experiencing the world in a new way, and then also creating the world in a new way. And that is why we also study how to create the conditions. How do we create new music? How do we create new spaces that holds the conditions for new understanding and new experience, you know? How do you tap into your creativity? So this is maybe a good way to begin. You can keep circulating around these notions for however long you would like. It's a way of checking in, you know, like, how do I see the world? And am I experiencing it? This new understanding. And then how do I remodel my life, my behavior, my language, my speech, my thoughts, everything I invest in? How do I remodel my home according to all of these that are becoming new? So these are basics. Beneath these would be actual structures to build on. When you think of the body and the mind, they're not just simple things. No, they're built on complexities. So we would speak to your mind and your body, and sometimes you may not understand what is being spoken in simple terms, but because your body holds complexity, even if your mind doesn't always understand what is spoken, the question is, does your body understand? Because if the body can organize the structures even without you knowing it, it's a very autonomic way of organizing. There's something in your body that knows. There's something that, so now you can see the inversion. There's something in your body that understands. There's something in your body that understands that your mind may not, but something in your body knows. There's something in your body that is very, very wise and can organize your heartbeat, your cells, your neurons, your synapses, can organize all the chemicals, all the circuitries in your system structurally. Even without your understanding, something understands. And so this is your commitment. You are here not just to feed your mind. Your mind will eventually catch up. But what you need to give nutrition for is your body. And if you just give it enough time, give it enough space for growth, for maturity, giving it certain terms, certain knowledge of how parts come together in relation to the whole, then your body would grow, which is to say, you will not have the same body next year. This year, next year, you will not have the same body. And when your body undergoes a change, what would follow is you would not have the same persona, psyche, you would not have the same understanding. There would be new structures all across, and you know, just need to take your time. So already this might help put you at ease, that you don't need to hurry, you don't need to attempt. There's no trying here. It's really just exposing yourself to something that you don't need to understand, because there is a part of you that understands. There's a part of you that understands the earth, that has been here for a long time, that belongs to deep history, that belongs to cosmic history. And you were born with that. So learning to work with that, the less you try, the more happens, right? The less you understand, the more understanding is there, coming from something body-based, because there's something in the body that actually knows. And when you think about movement, for example, like within the inner dance construct, there's something that is moving itself. There's some intentionality that is moving on its own that doesn't need instructions. Your body doesn't need those instructions. It knows where to go. It knows what to do. When the mind doesn't get in the way, then you're going to get there wherever it is that you are needing to go. Okay, so those are just some basics. Let's maybe make some space just so right. We can think these through within like a general mapping. Okay, so where are we going? Why are we doing this? What does the inner dance hold for us? Where do we go in that consciousness? Let's say you're reading about some of the experiences people have had, and people can go deep. I really believe that it's possible to go into some people call it the black hole. Oh,
Why are you still sharing? Sorry, your
yes,
screen.
it's
Okay,
not.
I don't see it. Am I the only one?
You don't.
No.
It should be sharing.
I can still see it if it's any.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's something with
Yeah.
mine. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Go
All
ahead.
right. For me, the black hole has never really been a concept. I really believe that we can go into it. And I believe every time we go to the dream, every time we die, we actually go there. So we would want to define it. And I want to explain why I'm bringing it up. It's connected to a lot of the other concepts that we're looking at right now. Inner dance has always worked with these terms. For me, the black hole is an aspect of the mind. It's not just any aspect, it's a specific aspect of the mind. And we can go there. We can go there when we dream. A lot of people try to go there through psychedelics. It's the reason why many people go into psychedelics. In the spiritual awakening, you can go there. And when we die, we go there. The near death, we go there. So I believe that we can go there, and it used to be very intense for us to go there. The aspect of the mind that holds so much more information, so much more data than what we might have thought holdable or possible. And I think we're able to go there more and more easily now. One definition of mind that is quite basic, even in the sciences, is mind is that which allows for us to hold a conscious awareness of what is inside. So what happens when we are not conscious of what is there? What if we became conscious of what we used to be unconscious about? That is what is revealing itself to us now. And I simply believe that that's happening because we understand so much more than we used to. We simply know more. And because we know more, it's only a matter of time before we experience this knowing. And that used to be in the realms of the unconscious. So as the unconscious becomes conscious of itself, it's only a matter of time before we get to that point. So there's something that is coming to us that had always been there. It's never been absent. It's just that we're a lot more ready for it now. And we're finding out that we're finding out that certain conditions actually can bring that about. So if I was to rename, once again, like the mother, now with this notion that she is an aspect of the mind, that there's an aspect of the mind that is there. Another word for the mother would be magnetism. If the mother was a force in the universe, she would be magnetism. If she was to be pervasive, a lot of people may not like this because magnetism doesn't seem to hold a consciousness from a physics perspective, but because magnetism is the aspect of the universe that either shapes the universe itself, because it's also that which stores the information, allowing us to remember, to hold on, to hold the information in place. Then it is magnetism itself that allows for consciousness to be possible at all. So that all experiences don't just go away. They are somewhere in here and out there waiting to be seen, to be felt. Okay, so a lot of this has many uses in terms of framing a spirituality, for example, that would be functional and workable today. In inner dance understanding, magnetism is one of two forces, that being an understanding of light as electricity and magnetism turning into each other. Historically, we've always worked with electricity and magnetism as metaphors for the forces that we're able to work with. These provide simple enough starting points for us to understand what we're doing, no matter how complex, no matter how many sounds that you use, how many words you use to bring context into the space. Electricity and magnetism could account for anything that goes up and anything that goes down, that goes through transition points. Then you're given guidance, you're given kind of mapping so as not to get lost as to, okay, like what are the things that I can do that increases magnetism? What are the things that I could do that increases electricity? So in the line of work that we do, are we increasing magnetism or are we decreasing it? Before going into formulations into that, either today or the next weeks, we would first ask what is there. Okay, if there were actual possibilities where we could increase electricity or magnetism, what would happen? Where would we go? The way to go about this, we would need to interrelate several concepts together. A lot of magnetism, for one, has something to do with time. Magnetism is related to time. The more you increase magnetism, the more you can access time. Not in a directional sense, but when you go to any place in the universe where magnetism is high, you actually can access memories and stored information a lot more. And this would be really, really interesting for practitioners of this energy. Why? Because when you study sound, and this is, a lot of this is only becoming known more and more these days, these decades, these years. Sound has both magnetic and thermal properties, meaning heat. Sound also has chronoceptive properties, so it's related to time. So when you manage sound, when you alter sound, you actually alter magnetism, and you alter temperature, and you alter time. Temperature, why is it there? Temperature helps store information. So depending on the place you live in the world, if it's cold, your body actually needs to store information. It needs to store it through heat. And so when you move to a place in the world that's a lot warmer, when you let go of that heat, you let go of information. So when you study metabolism, those who are tending to hold on to a lot of weight, they are holding on to memory. And when people go into the detox, when they go into diets, they're actually letting go of a lot of heat in the body, and they're letting go of a lot of memories, and they're letting go of a lot of magnetism. Magnetism helps to shape the universe. It helps to shape the information in your body. It helps to shape the information in your mind. So when change happens, magnetism somewhat needs to go down. Magnetism needs to go down so that there could be a reshaping, and electricity tends to go up. So if you have had experiences in the healing process where your body gets very hot all of a sudden, the moment you lay down, it's because you're releasing a lot of heat. It's not because your body's getting hot per se. It's actually because you're releasing the heat itself, and you're releasing a lot of the information. A lot of the memories are getting released. So it's really interesting to understand these correlations. So without getting attached, without latching onto the idea that the very goal is simply to reduce magnetism, there's actually also interesting notions. What would happen if magnetism increased infinitely, like so much that you would be able to experience time, not in the absence of it, but infinite time. Okay, so I really like what Matt shared about going through his records, going through his stuff. And he described it really well. He described it as a life review. This is the event that happens when you die. When you die, you go into your life comprehensively, in and of itself, in a complete hologram, where you look at every single event that ever happened in slowness. And for me, that is what the black hole signifies. Every time you go into the black hole, and you don't need to go into exactly that part of the universe to experience the black hole, that could be in the experience. This could be in the dream, it could be in the psychedelic journey, it could be in the inner dance process. When you experience a heightening of magnetism, you would experience a slowing down. And in that slowing down, you could almost even stop the movement of time itself, and you would be able to look around the whole hologram, the whole field of what you call life, what you call, it could be a thought, it could be a concept, it could be anything, it could be an object. Once you are able to really look at something, to really look at something, that's when you get to know it. That's where the pure understanding comes, and that's where the experience of that which you understand will come. So this is what we would philosophically call the monad. The monad is that which is complete. You cannot reduce it anymore. It's complete. It's the most irreducible point. You cannot add to it. You cannot subtract anything from it. It's perfect. It's complete. So when you experience yourself as a monad, as a complete being, something would happen to time. And this requires particular conditions that allow you to to stop everything. You don't need a workshop to be able to do it. Whatever it would take to slow down the runaway train. You could be in the library, you could be reading a book, you could just be taking a walk, like it exists always. It's always there. It's never not there. It's never not there. Yeah, so I think this is interesting to bring up now. And then alongside the life review, it's what is called the birth vision. The birth vision is where you see your life before you have lived it. It's to see time itself from a reversal or a retrocausality, where before your life has happened, your life is already finished. Before you lived your first day, you already lived your last day, and you have looked at it. There is an understanding, a complete understanding of your life before you entered it, that you committed, that you take full responsibility, like total responsibility before you even came into any experience. So when anyone says everything's happening for a reason, everything's happening exactly as it should, it's because there's something preconditioned. It's already been lived. You are simply going through the narrative or the story through the confines of time in order for you to experience something you already, embodied somehow. So I'm able to speak to you about this because I experienced the birth vision. I went into initially a life review after I experienced death. I saw everything happening, everything that ever happened, I saw it. And then I experienced myself in a way that I haven't actually been here yet. And I was left with the reality that even if I'm not experiencing that now, that reality is still there. It's always there. No matter what's happening, whether I'm awake or I'm asleep, I am actually always in my life review, and I'm always in my birth vision. This for me is the roots of the inner dance tree. This is where my understanding began. And when I was able to hold this kind of understanding that time is an illusion, that everything coexists, everything is going on all at the same time, I was able to become light. Like all these emotions that become very hard for people to work with, anger, resentment, lack of forgiveness. None of these made sense to me because I saw that everything actually is designed. It's all perfect. There are no enemies. There are no annoying people. There's nothing in the news that means something bad. There was no bad. There was no good. Everything just was. And if we could hold that, if we could make this real, somewhere in between both of these is pure creation. Everything would be according to how we draw from both death and birth. And we could change it. Even if we don't like what we're experiencing somewhere out there, something else is happening. And even though I'm not there, I'm always there. So that for me was able to slow down and stop the nature of what I call reality or life. And up until now, somehow I'm able to to hold all of this. It sounds amazing, it sounds huge. But deep down, like I had spoken, it's not something we're creating. There's an understanding of the world that's coming to us that's called oneness. And it's called resonance. And it's called completion. That would heal this other understanding that everything is separate, that things are not happening as they should. Okay, so I think that's an important set of starting points to understand what is the inner dance, where is it coming from, where did it begin? A lot of people are experiencing as workshops, and there's a lack of clarity in where these sessions are coming from. This is the source. This is the experience of the understanding that I am explaining now. This is where it began. It's where it began. And the interesting thing is that we are actually transcending the life of you and the birth vision. There would be a reality, a point in what is to come where we actually would transcend or go beyond what we are reviewing. Once we look at it, we're already letting it go. And because there is no difference between the life review and the birth vision, you know, seeing something after or before, there is no difference. It's the same space. The black hole is the same space. There's this point where we're actually going beyond, and this is something that was being spoken to me, that we're breaking the old stories. So in a way, there's actually a much larger circle to hold and encompass this. If all of these small circles are systems unto themselves, there's something learning that takes all of these systems that have lived on and on, again and again, multiple lives, not just as humans. We're now able to go into a much bigger life review and birth vision. And so we are becoming the much larger circle that holds all of these small parts. They're actually wholes unto themselves. Now we're able to hold a much, much bigger whole. And what would be the eventuality of this? Whether you experience this in this incarnation or the next, there would be what's called another dimension. There would be another dimension of being and living and creating and having and sharing. There would be another dimension. So we are merely transitioning to this next dimension, and we're given the tools. Music is a super fun tool. It's a super fun tool to understand the new dimension, because music has always held dimensionality. But it goes beyond music. There's so many different avenues to understanding culture, language, the brain, the mind, the biological, the ecosystem that is now transitioning to another dimension. So as I utter or say this, it might bring some more objectivity rather than personalizing some of this. The one of the questions would be, when we mention this, what is it that's actually dying? You know, is it you? I don't know if you watched the movie Oppenheimer, but he quoted something from the Bhagavad Gita. He said, time am I am the destroyer of worlds. What is it that is being destroyed? What is it that is dying? Is it you? Is it humanity? Is it something is dying? And what is dying is, you could call it an era, you could call it an epoch, you could call it an age. Specifically, what is dying is a dimension that has been holding information, maybe just within a one circle, a one container, a one thing that is bound. And what is happening is, as we let go of the boundaries that binds, certain lives or realities together, certain concepts, like we like how certain concepts must be bound and protected, walled up, another dimension. So what is dying is a dimension. What is dying is a dimension. And if there would be a death of a dimension of awareness, how we used to perceive the world, and a dimension could either be the dimensions of space. Classically, there are 3 dimensions of space. Direction, you can go forward or backward, left or right, up or down. And then there's the 4th dimension of time. Because right now we are being revealed much more dimensions of space. Right now, there could be as many as 10 dimensions of space in 1 dimension of time. When we become aware of more dimensions of space, if you're not just going to go backwards and forwards anymore, or left and right, or up and down, there are other dimensions that reshape your mind and your body that you are not as familiar with. And so we're transitioning into those new dimensions. So what is being born is an awareness of dimensions that have always been there, but we haven't been in it. We haven't been resonating in them. And so safely we create these conditions where those new eras, epochs, the new age can be glimpsed and can be normalized safely, one day at a time. So something will die. Something will die. Part of our body will die. We will have to transition. And when we get to what is next, it is an illusion that it will just be a one dimension. It's going to be multi-dimensional. So when you think about the nature of the work that we do, the inner dance is actually very apt. It's very appropriate for what is coming. The brain itself, like the nervous system, the brain itself holds a role in organizing dimension. Let's maybe clean this up just so we can understand the role of music in regards to the changing brain. You probably might have seen me do this. Dimension is made up of 2 words. Yeah, let's put it up here. Okay. So it's these 2 things, and noise is never going to be just noise in our study process. It's not just noise. In physics, there is very little distinction between noise and music or perceived sound. And what would create a difference is how you perceive it. So there's something about the mind that makes a decision where something is noisy or something is harmonious or musical. And so what we're able to hear more is what are the hidden patterns in what we used to call noise. That's sometimes seemingly chaotic, loud, noisy. We're able to hear the dimensions that we had maybe removed or tried to quiet down. So there would need to be an understanding of the narrative of the brain, the story of the brain that had gotten rid of the noise in order to limit a lot of the patterns that we did not want to perceive. And how the more noisy it is, the more people actually find silence. When people can stand the noise, there's actually a lot more silence, especially if it's the body listening and not the mind that likes to make decisions, whether something is good, something is bad, something is pleasurable, something is less pleasurable. So in the study of dimensions, we would teach the human how to hold several dimensions at the same time. In explaining this to you, then we can share with you playlists. We can share with you different experimentations on dimensionality, even as you study how you can construct or create your own music. Okay, so to maybe introduce ourselves to this, that which we would study in the long term. This is why it takes a year. Depending on the dimension you're going to be working with. So let's say we worked with this image, for example, this image where a dimension could be that which holds more or that which holds less. It could be maybe this one small point here. That could be a dimension, or this could be a whole dimension. You know, like what are you going to be operating in? Are you going to be operating within the small, or are you going to be operating in the big? All right. And what awareness would you be holding that allows you to operate the very, very big or the super duper small? So there's something in your body that holds understandings of each part. Each part actually knows what it's doing. And then there's something in your system that either could also understand like how the whole thing acts together as one. There could be the experience or the understanding of the gestalt, or the specialized, you know, the super duper small. I think the challenge is how to hold both. How are you able to hold totalities and wholeness? And then how are you able to hold the parts? Are you able to do it? Is this interesting to you? Whether it is or not, it's something that your body and your mind is doing anyway. So you need to train your mind to hold the whole thing and every single part at the same time. Whether there is coherent understanding or not, there is something inside you that is doing it anyway. And so on the way to that, something we would need to let go of is judgment, or what might be more exactly called a value judgment. That there's something in the human that has learned to hold preferences, that holds likes, dislikes, what is more pleasurable, what is painful, what is going to lead to success, what is going to lead to failure. In many ways, inner dance is designed to help us let go of value judgments. Because when we are not judging, we're not actually limiting. We're not holding back. And when the parts are able to be freed up, it would hold a much larger totality in flow and in flux. When the parts become rigid, when magnetism starts to hold rigidity in the way the parts are supposed to connect with each other, we don't experience totality so much. So there has to be some new training for children and for adults to understand how parts and wholes come together. And even as we hold that understanding, the experience itself needs to be real. So being able to hold several dimensions at the same time used to take a lot of skill. Sometimes you actually need to be kind of crazy and insane and weird to be able to hold connections. Now that we're becoming aware of more and more and more and more parts. So that's more or less one understanding of this. This is actually like a very deep philosophical questioning, like who is holding the space? What can we trust? That in philosophy that asks these questions is called determinism or causation. It's the question, what is determining life? What is integrating all the parts so that it becomes either a persona or like an aspect of reality that we are technically limiting. So when you try to study parts first before the whole, if that is what is designing, okay, were we to take the word design rather than determining, who is designing life or reality? And a lot of scientists are more interested in the parts rather than looking at the general space. We've gotten really good at designing how certain parts would more or less come together. So when you study nature, nature has so many different examples of how, it could be like ants, it could be termites. They can design their space, it could be bees that can design like a beehive. The single bees don't talk to each other. They don't actually have a grand big boss that tells them, okay, you do this and I give you the instructions. They more or less know how to design the whole. There's this pattern that's already inbuilt somehow, so that no one needs to tell each other what to do. But then when you go into the human system by way of causation, you have these executive governors, you have people who need to give instructions to the many parts. One example, for example, to bring up the movie Oppenheimer, the general called General Leslie Groves was managing as many as hundreds of humans all at the same time who were trying to construct the atom bomb, and none of the workers actually knew what the others were doing. They didn't have instructions as to how the whole factory actually worked. There were very, very few people that understood the totality or the whole. And then there were these incomprehensible number of workers, they all knew what to do in terms of their each and every part, their own respective part. But there was this big executive governor that understood the map. So I want to invite you to place yourself in that situation where, is there a part of you that understands the map? You are feeding yourself that. You are in a journey of receiving the big picture. And even as you take that in, you are not afraid to look at the small parts. So each small part that comes to you actually contributes to the whole thing. You just keep adding and adding and adding. Each small part is perfect. Each small part is a reflection of totality. They would all be the same. They'd all be different. So you're feeding your body all these different experiences, all these different possible interactions where all of these would start to come together seamlessly, even as you hold the larger field. So your challenge, your work now is to remember, it's to hold both. And when I say both, I'm saying there's two, there's not just two. It's to hold all of these dimensions at the same time, which belongs to different time and space continuities. But at one single time, if you can hold all of these, then you would be simple, yet you would be able to hold what is complex. And so this is what inner dance gives. Inner dance is not just a healing modality. It's not just an experience of energy. It's that which leads us to brilliance or next modes of intelligence that is both very, very old and very ancient, very old, that is able to take all of these that we've experienced throughout the earth and making that new again. Learning how to hold these simultaneously at the same time. The newness is there because there has to be creativity in how the patterns would interact the parts together. Like there would be new patterns because that is why we're here. But for that to happen, we need access to the old. So if you can train yourself to hold more parts, then we would create another sense of time and space. Okay, where this is not actually that complex. Okay, let's bring this into a functionality that it's applicable. The dimensions, for them to hold narrative, is we can only really live through story. Because if you're not living in story anymore, everything's going on at the same time, then you don't take it one day at a time anymore. Everything's just there, and you may as well not be here anymore. Story works through within time and space, what's called selection and combination. And combination. So this is how consciousness works. You can give consciousness as many parts as it can hold, and out of all those, it's going to make selections, and then it's going to combine what it has selected by way of creating order or chronology. And these orders and chronologies are bound by rules. So this is what defines a dimension. When you enter a particular dimension, it could be the third dimension, the dimension you're in now. When you then study, let's say, history, history has a chronology. So let's say the Egyptian, the Greek, the Roman, the Dark Ages in Europe, going into the Age of Enlightenment, maybe in other parts of the world, there would be specific chronologies. When you enter into a dimension, there would be an order of things, an order of things. So when people start to experience the energy, inner dance, Kundalini, when the changes come, it's actually because chronology is being reordered, either through light language or the different movements that happen, either physical movements or energy movements. History starts to change through the reordering of what happens first, what happens second, what is in the beginning, what is in the end. We start to mess up with the elements of the story, the elements of history. And so a new history starts to come about when we do new combinations. This sounds really simple. It's because it's simple. When you start to study the art of playlisting, the art of putting certain sounds or vibrations together, what you're doing is you're putting them in an order. You're creating a chronology where, okay, we start with this vibration and then we go to that vibration. There is a reason why people have gone deep in the inner dance process for so many years now, for 17 years. A lot of people ask, like, what are you doing? Are you just playing music? Are you just asking people to lay down and are you playing music? It's never really just been that. What we have been doing is discovering new orders or new combinations that break the old ways things have been chronologized, that are either based on error, reward systems, pain avoidance, pleasure seeking. When you know how to break the order of vibration, you also start to understand how you can break the old order in what is called the mind. And this is important. This is actually like big. These are big concepts. These have held the inner dance constructs for a long time. Let me give you a historical backdrop on what this has meant over the years. So my sister sent me a book when I was living in the island. This is way back in 2007. She hasn't seen me. My family thought I was dead, and then they found out I was living in the island in meditation. And for some reason, my sister sent me this book by Carlos Castañeda called The Magical Passes. And this book was very important. It was key in the inner dance process over many years, justifying why the energy was happening. If we could maybe read a little bit from this book, it gave some causation. For one, that there are correlations between the inner dance energy and ancient times. It described how people in ancient Mexico would experience their bodies in different ways, and the bodies would begin to move as the shamans entered into heightened awareness. So this has some similarities to what is happening to my own body in the inner dance process. It spoke about an energy science where the energy inside each and every one of us is resonant and complete. It's not something you can add to or subtract from. It's irreducible, making it monadic. Okay, so some of these are conceptual. I'm not gonna. Okay, this is what I want to go to. The sorcerers called this ability to perceive energy as seeing. Okay, I find this very, very interesting. They described seeing as a state of heightened awareness in which the human body is capable of perceiving energy as a flow, a current, or a wind-like vibration. To see energy as it flows in the universe is the product of a momentary halt of the system of interpretation proper to human beings. I underlined system of interpretation. It's a little bit like, it's in my own notebook, so I can't change it now. So it describes here that we experience the energy when we stop the thinking process or the system of interpretation that is deemed proper. It's important to see here that it says momentary. But one of the reasons why I find this interesting is if they call this seeing, in many ways, what is being described here is not seeing. To halt the system of interpretation is to not see things as we normally see it. And as this is defined in ancient Mexican tradition, this is actually what it means to see. So when we experience the design of the process, everything to do with asking people to lay down, to close their eyes, there is this hope that there would be this momentary halt in the system of interpreting information, the system of thinking. So in many ways, this describes non-judgment. Something else interesting in this book, if I was to look for it, is it reflected something that was happening in my body, where my body makes these electric noises. I'm making them now. It's my joints were releasing all of these electricity and magnetism, and I think this is just worth mentioning because this clarifies to us that the momentary halt of the system of interpretation isn't just going to be happening in the mind. It must happen in the body itself, that the body itself is in a judgment, is in a process of interpreting. And when we halt the system of interpretation, then electricity would flow, magnetism would flow, and the body becomes light. So somehow the tricks, the techniques, the tools that we have acquired in inner dance, all of this is designed to allow the system of interpretation to stop. And then we would experience energy flow. For many years, we stuck with this. We actually held this to be the very training mechanism itself. Today, we don't simplify things in that way. Energy flow is not the be all end all, because if it's just really energy flow, you actually give way to possible ego tendencies or addictions, subjectivity, personalization. So there has to be something more. It cannot just be about halting or stopping systems of interpretation. Like, people cannot just become energy. We have to understand how systems of interpretation can rise again that holds higher expressions of everything is connected, everything is one, everything is happening for a reason. And this gives us a deep relationship with what does it mean to live several dimensions at the same time. What does it mean to have lived on Earth again and again, and not to keep reliving mistakes, not just to become like children only. It's very beautiful to play around, and but it's very important, especially with what's happening in the world right now, to grow up. So it's not just to become young. There has to be an access of the old that holds the memories in slowness. And so for that reason, like studying becomes amazing. Like the world is about to experience speed. It's about to get really fast. The amount of competition and anxiety. There would be a lot of emotions and there would be so much judgment to come. More and more people are going to be opinionated and they're going to speak their so-called truth that's coming from a very personal space. To study how the person can access planetary wisdom would be something for you to hold now. To be able to speak about it means you can hold it. To hold it in awareness means that people might experience something more, something they didn't expect that they had access to. So this could be the time. It wasn't always so clear in the years prior what all of these mean. But now we can expand and extend these conversations in a way that won't just loop and won't just oversimplify and generalize. There are actual answers to the beautiful and intense questions that I am really sure you are holding. So get ready for processes to change and to shift, for you to be able to experiment with different ways of holding the energy, especially through the music. How you hold selections and combinations could determine where we would go. This is what we're putting forward here. How you hold the amount of information that you decide you can, how you put order out of the chaos. You know, like what dimension would that be? Going back to the question of death, now that we're getting a sense of what is it that actually dies, how do you hold that which is being born? Another dimension. So we would share with you apps, we would share with you certain programs, we'd share with you certain techniques that would almost accidentally like channel these different combinations. You wouldn't expect them, but they're going to be there. It's not that hard anymore because there are technologies that bring these improbable probabilities that are normally quite hard to anticipate. These algorithms are there, the algorithms of trust, the algorithms of intuition. Okay, so that's my offering for today. This could lead us into maybe some ideas, some questions, some insights as to your own interests, and some of the ones holding space, local spaces, regional spaces. Maybe you have also some ideas in your notes, like ways to expand this, whether it be the material, the curriculum, the techniques, the experiences. Thank you for listening. Maybe we can hold like an open dialogue space now.
I can go first really quick. I don't know if it's going to layer on to what you had offered, but I felt in resonance to share what I was experiencing while you were talking nearly the whole time. I think for the past month or a little bit before, longer than a month, literally every single thing that you were layering on talking about, from experiencing the energy first as a mother field to everything onto the life review, um, all of that, I've been literally experiencing the exact same thing. So I was just like crying like throughout you talking because I was just literally like, I've been like walking myself through this process and this experience and just been like talking out loud to myself, like pacing around, like, and just like writing notes and journals and just trying to like put all this stuff that's like happening and how I've been perceiving it in multiple dimensions together into like one thing that I can kind of understand. So it was just really mind blowing to like literally like almost like through you like hear myself like talking back to me. That was like kind of crazy actually. So yeah, I don't know, my mind's a little blown at this point, but I feel like you know like I guess like validated in a way, although that isn't, I don't feel like is the goal or anything, but I do just feel like a lot of like a, I don't know, I'll just leave it without the word for it. So yeah, I just wanted to share that, and I think as other people share, I might be able to have some more input on layering on to the things that we've discussed. But I'm just having such a crazy moment of resonance where it just like feels like reality, like this particular dimension of reality isn't even real. It's like mind blowing. So yeah, thank you.
Love that. Abby, you wanted to share. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, Pai. So this is about the life review and birth vision that you spoke about, and the only difference between both of them is the actual occurrence of it, where life vision or birth vision is before your life has occurred, and life review is after it has occurred. That is after death and before birth, kind of thing, right? But in between both of them is the actual experience, and when you experience it, there is the movement of karma, change in karma. Karma you can think of again as memory that gets transitioned or changed, right? Because just having birth vision or life review is not going to burn karma. Like us just seeing an event doesn't mean we experience that event. So how do you integrate the concept of karma with you spoke about magnetism, electricity, heat, and all of this, right? And when magnetism increases, time slows down. So when time slows down, you're obviously experiencing your karma at a very long period. The heaviness increases. There's also gravity element in karma. So how do you integrate those concepts?
In the experiences that we've been observing, it feels like when a slowing down occurs, when a being is able to perceive the different potentialities or possibilities where contradictions are hiding, like paradox contradictions. It's when we're able to allow for the things that we're, let's say, resisting or pushing away, like, oh, this is not a part of me. This is in that slowing down, there's almost an allowance for the dualities that otherwise are pushed away. Or so I do believe that certain decisions are being made on a body level or on a spiritual or mental level, and it almost feels like fear is that which does not allow a person to see certain parts that are so in the experience of death, like in my own experience anyway, when I experienced my life review and birth vision, um everything that I had ever projected into the outside that's coming from the internal space we call the self, I had to accept everything. I had to accept everything in the world as aspects of me. And the feeling was painful, it was blissful. It's like I had to own up that everything that's happening, it's to my own creation. And at that point I had to become I was God. But for that to be true, everything and everyone had to be God at the same time. So that level of ownership, I feel, allows us to go beyond karma, as we see story as something repetitive, something that goes into a loop. The instructions were clear. When I was asked by Spirit to transcend my own cycle, there was clearly this invitation to humans that we can break the story. Otherwise, it's like we're stuck. We're always in this constant, So because I was coming from the perspective that we were all God, we were all goddess, we were all actually the universe, and I was living in that dimension. I actually needed to make my way back to my normal beliefs just to interact with people. I had to almost release myself from being able to hold that much, because it wasn't easy. I do believe that decisions are being made when an authentic observation, a real seeing out of love and out of pure acceptance of everyone. Like I had to accept that everyone was a part of me, that all of these incarnations, they are all ours. Everyone's past life is actually like still aspects of everything. So a new reality would constitute a new holographic understanding of how everything is one, and that this could be explainable either through ancient wisdom or new science. It's I don't know how you might resonate with this, but this was the perspective that was there when all of this was beginning to spread.
So what you're hinting at is, if this whole story was fixed, then there's no point of free will or change to the story or our effort. And you're saying that a new holography that you are going to create or try to create is basically that change to the story,
Yes.
default setting to something better.
But that we would need to incorporate a very non-linear understanding of time and the narrative for us to hold this level of creativity. And somehow our cultures, our sciences are only getting acclimatized to this right now. But it begins with the experience, because people are already going through it. I think we're suffering from this idea of, even from a Catholic tradition, of sin, that you can't, break away from it. What would empower people to experience forgiveness? And I remember when I experienced that in my body, living with this idea of original sin, of Adam and Eve, and when I actually let that go inside my own body, it was incredible. It's like, wow, I am not a bad person. I'm not stuck in the loop. So I'm watching that happen to people's bodies, and they have to become like babies again in order to release themselves from the victimhood. It's like this sense that you don't create your reality somehow. Because you're right. I really love your line of questioning, because this is heavy, this idea that we cannot escape.
Thanks, Pai.
Thank you. Okay, Val. And then Brendan.
Thank you, Pai. Well, I was listening to Matt, and of course the whole incredible class today. And for me, I had like 3 different scenarios. the first one was like everything that Matt is living in real time and observing and all that. I feel like I lived it in the brutal way, I guess in my own way. You went to find your island, and I was thrown right through myself because I couldn't handle life anymore, and that took me to literally have a rebirth because I lost consciousness 3.5 days, and I just gave up on life. So coming back from that, being a nomad now, coming to Maya, which is now, well, the first time I had inner dance with you music, I was in La La Land for 25 minutes or so. So understanding the process and energy of what this brings, first with so much love and gratitude, because first I lived it from a horror scene for years, I want to say decades, to now understanding and living it through me, within me. And I will repeat over and over, for me, the knowledge of inner dance is equal or more stepping into Maya. So that for me has really summed it up for me. And now seeing as a facilitator, as a person who is guiding this process with other people in different countries, I see the whole circle. So from the survivor and all this victimhood and death, literally not hoping, but went for it, to all this process is making sense in every way. And I'm just really excited and appreciating, and kind of for me, this class was total connecting the dots. So I'm super excited to understand the process. I don't want to say I wish I would have found inner dance before, because if I did, maybe I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So it's all in divine order, but it just it was so clear to me how to connect the dots. So thank you.
Okay, Brendan. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. You're still muted. It would be nice to hear your voice. Wait, I can help to unmute you just in case you can't find the. Wait, unmute. There.
Better?
Amazing.
Okay. I don't know where to start, actually. There's a few ways I could go into this, but for a bit, I had a bit of problem of feeling like that fake it until you make it, like that love in yourself or the trust in yourself, just to let the information come through and to come out when it's needed, or when it finds a match in frequency for the information to come out. It's almost like if I was speaking to somebody, I didn't really have to understand what they said. I could just, as long as I gave them full concentration, it would lodge in the body, and then that would come out when it needed. The trust information was there. And then when I was in Egypt, I just had something tell me to go and sit at every corner of this temple. And I was just looking, and I'm looking at these pillars, and they'd broken away in parts, they'd cracked, and they'd been there for thousands of years. Just, they weren't perfect, but they were strong enough to, I guess, in the masculine sense, to hold the foundation of the temple and allow the feminine to dance within the temple. But then I was looking at it from this human form, Brendan. If Brendan was that pillar, he'd be picking at those little imperfections, maybe going back with some concrete and smoothing it over, making it look better. And there was a sense that in doing that, as the masculine in myself, subconsciously, like the feminine in myself would pick up that was being judged, even though it wouldn't even know that, wouldn't even be thinking that, the feminine, but just think, oh, he's there repairing it, making it better or stronger. But the subconscious level, but the feminine was being fed this message, not quite good enough, not quite able to handle it. But in truth, it doesn't really matter how fractured or broken we are, we can be strong enough to hold the load. If we don't judge but we're not strong enough to hold it or whatever, or we're not judge it. Sometimes we hold it, we'll have a breakdown, but we can still be strong enough to raise again. And that is sending a message to the feminine that they're not being judged in that space. And that's when that creative juice in our life force comes out. And it's almost, you know, those, I think we've all had it, those times where we're doing something, we're into it creatively, and just go, oh my God, where did time go? What happened? It's like just a spontaneous movement where you're in a space that's not being judged. It's timeless nearly. And it's being very forgiving to yourself when you're judging yourself. Like for me, this one, personal experiences, and I've found myself judging again. It's almost like, oh, I love you, just perfect as you are. And rather than let the emotions grab hold of that vibration moving around and the mind making a story of it, just follow them deeper into the body. And then it just starts just moving and moving. So all this trust and judgment, it's really got to, like you were saying before, I really resonated. You can be that little bit there in that what do you call it, dimension. Be that little bit there and that little bit there and that little bit there, but you can never be all until you're the one that's all. And then it's yeah. But to get there, I was almost feeling like I'm faking it until I'm making it. I just had to be so forgiving of myself. Really, like, so catch myself, and rather than say, oh, why am I back there? Just go, oh, you caught it. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Just go, everything's just fine as it is. You're just perfect as you are. It really did felt like I was faking it, but then it just clicked one day. It just, no, you are just perfect. It's all just happening for a reason. Yeah, thank you.
So good. Wow. Anyone else would like to share? Carly? Mm.
Can you hear me? Thank you so much for opening up this completely mind expansive space. Throughout, whenever you were speaking, I find myself like going into a trance as you're explaining these concepts, and it's so wonderful to hear someone else's perspective on these experiences and these different spiritual experiences and life concepts. And it feels like, you know, another piece of myself telling myself a story that I already know, but just in a different perspective. And it helps to put a little bit moreness in there of like, oh yeah, well, I forgot about like the life process and how expansive that can be to learning whenever you have that experience that breaks you open, and then you learn that things aren't as they seemed, and then you have to like reintegrate and transform yourself into something different, and then you're no longer that thing that had that experience anymore. So you have to then, well, I guess you don't have to. A lot of people just stay in that place for a while because that can be uncomfortable. But I always loved that space of like movement and creation, and I love to just follow the energy of like the truth and what is the most true, what feels the most essential. So I've always done that in my life. So I moved through my cycles really quickly, and that creative process is like so juicy. And I know that after the integration, that it's exciting to get back to that place. So I always remember that whenever I'm going through something hard, or I try to remember it anyways, that like it may be confusing or difficult, but whenever you get to the other side and you understand that all of those things, you can now break them apart into different pieces and ways, and you can do things differently now. You can make life fresh from a new perspective, and it's just so delicious. In my sessions, I've been including some breath work. I have some, I guess, if you have some input, I've learned from a teacher, and I took what she gave me as a construct, and I was using that and also trying to follow the energy of this area because it's a little constricted Bible Belt type of area, small town. And so trying to follow the energy as best as I could from what I know, and trying to commune with the energy of what it is. I started incorporating breath work because that's also something that I did previously, was soma breath sessions, and I know how that can sink people into their parasympathetic, into that rest and relax state that you want to get to in the beginning. And throughout, like, the trying to follow that wave with the music, we're doing it much better now, I feel like, and especially with the inclusion of the noise app to like fill in those gaps of like where things need to be a little bit like extra lower, or other things need to be like extra alpha, gamma, or extra delta. But people, and I kind of got very what's the word? Felt like almost some shame in a lot of the beginning of what I've been doing this, because people don't really move. They are like planted to the floor. Some people actually say that they are like, they feel like they can't move, or they feel like they can't move, but they're levitating. But for my teacher, it always felt like the goal was to have body movement. So I was just like racking my brain of like, why aren't people moving? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm having a little bit more grace and understanding for people's process and how different people might be here versus other places, because people generally don't have any kind of meditation practice or mind expanding practices that they're doing currently. So everybody's pretty fresh. And I think that's an important inclusion in having those kinds of like wildly opening, activating experiences. But yeah, I just wanted to ask your opinion, feel into that.
Okay.
Any words come through?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, so much there. I won't touch too much upon breathwork. I think it's up to anyone to decide what the portal would be. And I would ask Matt to share a little bit after I maybe contribute. While you were speaking and whilst Brendan and others were speaking, I had this clear memory of a shift that I had undergone between the years 2017 and 2019. I think the most important thing that holds a space is the questions that you ask, whether it be verbal or not. There's always a question there. A question isn't really an energy that says we don't know yet what is knowable. A question simply holds a space. In the Philippines, that's a tribal tradition where the shamans knew the questions that were lingering in the air, and they bring about a process of emergence, which is to make visible that which is hiding. It just makes things more honest. In the first years of my work, I used to ask more the question, who are you? When you ask a question, when you hold that, it could be a statement or it could be a question. When a person is laying down, when they absorb the words, the sound, something would respond that isn't just going to come from their mind. You would have the ability to cut through or to break the wall. It's like you can go straight rather than mediate or to have an in-between. You literally just be able to cut through. And when the body starts to respond, the body is that which holds the answers to the question that's being held. First and foremost, it's a category mistake to state that when the body is not moving, that there is a blockage. This is a mistake. And this is a mistake that we're trying to correct over the years. Some of the deepest experiences would come about when the body isn't moving. And this is going to be important in the region that you're in. In the Americas, non-movement would be a lot more insightful and productive than something movement-based. There are limitations in the brain activations in merely just the movements, because the spreading of activation when the movement is happening, it's limited in mostly the frontal cortex, where control mechanisms are being held. So too much of that actually leads to the addiction pathways, being addicted just as much, which is the dopamine. It's a dopamine release. So we try to go beyond that. So yeah, like breath work is interesting in that sense, because breath work, breathing activates in accordance to both the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, meaning you can control your breath, but at the same time, beyond a certain duration, you cannot. Something is in control of the breath. So when you take hold of the control in the beginning, that does allow certain people to access their will, but it's a whole different nervous system, somatic versus autonomic. So I prefer not to tell people to breathe in a certain way. I'd rather just let the natural breath come, which then would co-activate with the cardiovascular system. The heartbeat holds rhythm, and that affects the brain states that then would bring people into dimensionality. And I don't like to impose an action when in fact the body already knows what to do. So I think what would be more interesting and provocative is to learn how to break through. How do you cut through the veil? So when I stopped asking the question, who are you? I started to ask the question, what are you? I wouldn't exactly ask it like that. I would ask questions like, while they're in the process, I would ask like, what is time? And when people's bodies receive questions like that, there's an objectivity. So no matter how cultural, religious, how conservative, there's something in every human being that holds wisdom and remembrance of what was there before, all of these conditionings, these thought forms. So you want to walk into people's field with enough trust that the space opens, but there has to be enough power and confidence that when you ask the question, when you pop the question, like, where are you coming from? Where are you from? Like what is time? When that activates inside people, they would go straight there. What we might call truth, like unmediated truth, truth that's coming from the absolute experience. And then you let go. You just allow it to work itself. And because you are experimenting already with different vibratory layers, say it's not just the noise app, right? It's holding earth vibrations, it's holding frequencies, it's holding more layers. It takes a lot of courage for people to expose themselves to that, and it's scary for us to get people into those situations because you don't know what's going to happen, and what if something actually does happen. So you do have hold of the context and how you holding the space still means holding the information. Anything that you say will influence where they would go. Like would it be ancient Egypt? Would it be to speak about deep history? There's something inside the human body and mind. So to speak about the Bible Belt, to speak about people who are holding on to, let's say, the narrative according to the Old Testament, and there are many views in that states that there's this anti-evolutionist, non-Darwin view of evolution where everything was just created and it was several thousands of years ago. So there's something in the brain that doesn't incorporate more. It's conservative in a way that the timeline and the narrative is actually quite simple. And so a transformation or healing could be to be able to expand so we can hold on to something bigger. When there is anthropological study in regards to, let's say, the Bible versus evolution, there is in the former an actual resistance to a larger field of time. Like there's something in the mind or the brain that won't easily shift into, I am older and I am a holographic mirror of all that is. So it's very interesting to understand the transition from, let's say, a geocentric or theocentric. What is the center? Like what is the middle that people hold as truth? And if they were to shift into, let's say, a more omnicentric view of the world where everything is the center, everything is universal, everything is big, and we're co-constructing everything. There's causation shared, not just God created, not just nature created or humans are trying to create, but everything is co-creating something. It's a new mind model. It's a new worldview. There has to be a reshaping. And everything that you say would bring about the reshaping. Let's listen to Matt because he's been dealing with conservative American bodies. He's been
Right.
observing the transition.
So while Pi was talking, I feel like I'm just gonna end up saying similar things, but in a different way. Because I'm right up the road. You said you're at the top of Florida. I'm at the bottom of South Carolina, and the field is pretty similar all throughout these places. So one of the first things I would point out to you is like, all right, so you're the facilitator in the room, right? Which I think is funny, and maybe you'll understand why when I get to like point 3. I wrote like a little list, but because I think the whole thing just does itself. Literally, like everything that's happening is just the thing. But so yourself, you're dealing with a value judgment. So with the second you step into the room and you're setting yourself up that you're looking for movement or you're looking for like expectation, that's already like kind of gonna probably impart on the field a little bit. So just to try to go in with just like as open as possible is really, really helpful. And then like it's really like Pi was saying, this is something that when I first started facilitating, I'll tell the story because I think it's funny. I hit up Pi on WhatsApp. I'm like, hey, I think I'm ready to facilitate, but like, do I need to get like a blessing or something? Like, I don't know what to do. And he was just like, yeah, I don't know. You just do it. You just decide you're ready and then do it. And I was like, okay, perfect. But his advice to me was around conversations, around telling a story, because we are people that live in this area, because we are these people as well that we're, giving sessions to. They came for a reason, right? They're there because there's some level, there's trust built around you and what you're offering, so you really just got to be those people. And it's all about a conversation. Like, a big thing that really helps good movement and sessions for me, not movement like movement, but I mean like the movement, like the opening, for me, is just kind of seeing where people are coming from. Like, I'm not opposed to talking about their religious experiences or what they ate last week. Like, there's always going to be like a conversation, when you're just meeting someone at the bus stop, kind of thing, that like just opens people down and gets them on a more level of trust. Like, that's where you start, and then just see where it rolls, because the energy is really dictating everything, especially in the space, because you're there. I mean, the second somebody decides to go, the energy is like already working, so it's just like you're just trying to level with them. Y'all are feeling each other out, essentially. And for instance, for me, is I had somebody come in and she didn't express very much to me early on in the session. She went through and then came out on the other end of the session and was like, yeah, so I'm really religious and I didn't know what to think about this, but I just kind of closed my eyes and something told me this had no contradiction with what I believed. It was just like, I don't know, something to try. And she literally like had the experience where you go into, have you ever seen Star Wars? You go like light speed mode and then like everything starts rushing. She like jumped out of her body at like light speed. That freaked her out a little bit. So she like kind of woke herself up. But this was somebody with like, a preconceived paradigm. And essentially, like, all we're trying to do is allow people the space to explore for themselves, because they already know what is. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else that I need to say that I felt like I needed to say to explain this. But yeah, I think it really comes down to, instead of having that mindset of, oh, I'm in this place where people are going to reject this, or people aren't going to understand me, or like whatever the personal judgment is, the more you're able to shed that, the easier you're able to just like allow the field to open, and just everything kind of blooms. So yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate all the input. I do. I've kind of been pretty weird my entire life, so I definitely am used to people not getting me, and not really like. I understand that people are going to get what they get, and they're going to like it or they're not going to like it. It's not up to me. But I do have. I'm not from here, so that doesn't help me out a lot to understand. And people really puzzle me, and I'm getting a little bit more understanding. I've been here for 3 years, but I like the questions. I wasn't asking during the session. I always do like a drop in at the beginning, like meet, introductions, intentions, those kinds of things. But I have a lot of deep questions that are popping up into my mind that I can ask during the session, like especially for people that are very attached to religion. What is love? What is forgiveness? What is grace? What is, yeah, who are you? What are you? What is important to you? Yeah, so I'm very excited because I have a session on Friday. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Amazing. Okay, Abhi, you raise your hand.
Yeah, Pike, you were explaining about the body movement as a reaction of unformed pathway being formed at that moment, and that is why the body moves. So once the pathway forms, the body doesn't move later on. Is that?
The movement is a dimension unto itself. Non-movement is also another dimension. So what we would be studying over the next months is, when a manifestation is happening, it could be an emotion, it could be a memory, It could be it could just be a body sensation of pain or temperature. We can actually map out where in the brain is the activation happening. There's the 4 different lobes or cortices, whether it be the frontal, the parietal. So we're getting to a point where we can match or help to spread the activation. So for example, visions are always interesting. At what point do people start to journey inside and then travel throughout deep history, or like go to different planets? We can activate those through different layers. And what is on the way there is the movement. Very often when movements are happening, visions are not taking place, because the movements are usually centered around the front of the brain, and visions are happening at the back of the brain. So learning to hold something more relaxed, something deeper, more bass, more delta, allows for people to go into other dimensions. But the movements actually keep people here. So a lot of people have gotten attached to the concept of movements, and as was just shared, a lot of people are being trained to say to follow that you need to keep always making people move. It's not true. It's a category mistake. So it's always interesting to explore and to just be open, so we're not trapped. We actually start judging that this is a good session or this is a bad session if certain things are not happening. If we're just open, everything is actually amazing.
So if people have linked movement to trauma release, that's
Yes.
what I see. So
It's-
you mean to say that most of the trauma is in the frontal lobe and it is getting released, and that is when movement is more, and later on when
well, the release mechanisms that's in the physical movement, yes, the activation is here. But trauma could still be lodged in, let's say, the place where the like memories are being held. That's in the temporal lobe. It's at the bottom. So it's not that simple, in a way that a lot of the activations are happening simultaneously. It's more like combinations of different activations. But we need to, let's say, systematize things by talking about, okay, let's understand them one at a time, and then let's see how we can combine those. The ideal is to activate the whole brain. That's where people are not here anymore. When you start to hear these experiences where they went into another universe, that's even the point in which people have a hard time explaining where they came from, because they came from a place where words don't work anymore. That's the whole brain being activated. But what has been popularized is more the Kundalini, as a concept, and a lot of it is becoming more like physical, like very base. I think we need to go beyond some of these simple, understandings.
Thanks.
We'll go there. It's really interesting. Okay, Linda, you raise your hand.
Hello, sorry, I just have very quick questions. I'm very interested in what we were just talking about. Can we go into more depth with that? Because I don't remember my dreams, and I struggle to access memories, especially when I'm in session. And I get a little bit of FOMO because everybody else can. So I'm not sure if is it directly related to the music and the construction of the playlists, or is it just the energy on its own that can, I guess, balance the whole brain and allow you to access those different things?
So it would have to depend on where anyone is at, and based on all of your experiences, that's more or less where you're at. It's not. We can't also get attached to, let's say, story elements to come up in the dream space. right now we're moving into other definitions of dream where, because normally when we talk about dreams, there's something linear where there's a story that happened when we were dreaming. But the new understanding of dream is actually where all stories are happening all at the same time. So very much what people are latching onto as phenomena, aspects of the dream, this is actually just what you were trying to hold on to on your way out of that dimension. It's just a snippet. So what we're interested in is wisdom, intelligence levels, and brilliance. So if we're not just attached to the experience, the real gift a lot of this brings is the ability to hold a lot more in a non-judgmental way. It's just to be wise, like in a way. So somehow a lot of this is organizing what's inside of us. Like these might sound like ideas, but in a way we're actually reordering our bodies and our brains and our energies to be able to hold a story that would hold all stories, something consistent, because details come and go, right? It's like, okay, I saw this, I saw a dragon, I saw a flower, I saw a rainbow. At the end of the day, like, so what? Does that actually matter? What matters is how are we even constructing how are we constructing life at all? And that's more of what we're going to be studying. It's not the phenomena, but how is the construction happening in the first place. But because you are going to be holding the space, then we are going into discussions as to how meanings are made in the body. Movement holds a key to that. Whether the body moves in the inner dance or not, movement plays a part in life, so that all of our concepts are actually held together by movements that navigate the space that we call the mental construct. So when we free up our ability to move across the space, we can conceptualize things more differently. So as you study how to be a space holder, don't get attached to your own experiences, because you'll be given what you deserve. The experiences are always metrics as to where you already are at, and whatever's showing up, that's where you're at. But when you do hold a space, you want to be open to surprise or shock. You have to be open to unlikely things. So without getting attached that this needs to be more of what comes up and that's like less, just being there in a space of listening and seeing what comes up. Because we're studying, you will be able to at least map out, okay, I can put that in a certain folder, and without really getting attached that this is something that's supposed to happen. Our what we value is more of like what is happening at all. So it's not to control the experiences, it's more to study what is consciousness, how is it structured in time and space, even the concept of dream. What is dream? What does it really mean to dream? Now that question can't be answered in a day. It can't even be answered in a week. It's a very, very deep question. And there are so many avenues, and we're going to go through all those. What we can do is to share with you the different playlist systems that we have in the community. Why don't you just explore, see how you can, see what you can make of it. So talking about dreams, for example, there are ongoing experimentations, for example, on people using the inner dance not just while awake. They would start going into inner dance while they're sleeping. And then there's another experience of the dream that's also another experience of the mind. So we would ask these questions. How are you experiencing your consciousness differently? The signs, the symbols, they don't matter as much as how they are being constructed and where they are emerging from. So I don't know if this helps, but it's a really big.
Yes, yes, it does. I often find, like, because I don't know, I haven't yet held any, I haven't facilitated yet. I feel like I need more of the experience in order to understand what everyone I'd be facilitating is experiencing, if that makes sense. I don't know. If that makes sense.
Don't get stuck with that. Like, there
Okay.
are some of the most amazing people I've seen holding the space, they didn't experience anything. Somehow they just went out there and they were just shocked at how deep people would go. And I think this would be a good way to circle back to how we were starting this conversation. What we're interested in is in the collapse, the happy, gentle, yet accelerated collapse into 0 point, which could be spirit, soul, belief, inspiration, love. So getting people to trust, getting people to surrender is really what it's about. And somehow that actually brings us into an even deeper experience. To be honest with you, like, I do this work, a lot of people do this work because you actually go deeper when you bring other people into it. It's a deeper inner dance to bring people into that consciousness. It's a deeper trance because it requires that you surrender more. It's a scary situation to get people to go in. So something inside us has to die to get people to enter that space of uncertainty and the unknown. Just do it.
Okay. Challenge accepted. Thank you.
We'll send some playlists that you can experiment with, and we'll keep sharing.
Great. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Anyone who hasn't shared, would like to share, and then we'll close soon. We're beyond 3 hours. It's been amazing. Julia, do you want to share anything? Heidi? And then no? Yeah, so it's been great. Fanny, Flor. Wow. So I'm hoping this was an amazing first call. It holds simple enough understandings, but these you can extend and expand however ways you might imagine over the years. Like, I would watch this again myself, because there's something in this call that actually holds the essence and the middle space of what is inner dance at its core. So I want to thank you for your contributions. It's super lively, super dynamic to see you holding the space as much as like all of us who are holding the space are also just like midwifing this. Let's keep the conversations going, and we'll see you in the next call. Let's I don't know if Italy you're there, but we can help to close together.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, everyone. We have this, let's hear our noises and voices around the world closing ceremony. So you can unmute yourself. Say bye-bye in your language, or...
All right. Goodbye and good night.
Thank
Have a good day.
Merci, bonne nuit.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.